Hello and welcome to this episode of Animasaurus. Today we're going to break down and have a bit of a look at the brand new Looney Tunes cartoons. If you haven't seen it yet, please go watch it and then come back and watch my analysis so I don't spoil any of it. So way back in the 30s, the original Looney Tunes kicked off. They were an opening act to feature films and they were played on the big screen everywhere. So HBO Max is a new competitor on the streaming service and they have the rights to the Warner Brothers cartoons. With that is the Looney Tunes catalogue. But with that, they've commissioned 1,000 minutes of brand new Looney Tunes cartoons. The first one's been called Pest. So we're going to take a look at the compositional elements of the new short, how it relates from characters from the old to the new, and we're also going to look at what they've done for 2D tricks to make their animation work. I also want to give a shout out to Ferris Wheelhouse. They've done a brilliant talk through of this short, so if you're interested in learning more about this cartoon, definitely check out their link in the description. So without any further ado, please join me on Pest Coaster! The Bugs Bunny IP has been around for many years. The original shorts were shown back in the 1930s and 40s where they became huge. Really built the Warner Brothers studios around the cartoons, and Warner Brothers animation has been one thing that's really pushed forward. I grew up on the original Warner Brothers cartoons. They were what got me into the industry and wanting to be a part of the industry to start off with, especially when I learnt that there was only one guy, Mel Blanc, that done all the voices for all the cartoon characters. That was a big thing and it blew my mind. So I'm still a big Warner Brothers fan, so I'm really excited to see what direction they take with these the new 2D shorts. For anyone who's interested, the 3D shorts that were done about 3 years ago were amazing. Definitely go check them out. But let's have a look at some of the 2D shorts. But let's dig into some of the stuff that's inside Pest Coaster. First thing I want to talk about is the colours. From the original ones, they've definitely kept Bugs as a normal colour. But one thing which I did kind of notice is he's now got these yellow gloves. Originally, Bugs had white gloves and he was just white and grey, but he's now got these yellow gloves which seem to appear. Another thing which I find very interesting in a comparison to the original is while they've kept these the background colours very bright and vibrant, there is a lot of background characters in here. One thing, when you go back and look through the original shorts, you'd very rarely see any background characters. That all the story and all the focus would be on the main characters, and there would not be background characters. It's just a difference. Another thing which is very interesting, the way they've done this, it's a throwback to the original. The way that their animation is set on top of the backplate. This throws back to the original way they used to do things on glass plates. But they've really pushed this idea. They've got the very paintedly background, and then they've got this very hand-drawn foreground, which both creates the contrast between background and foreground and pulls your eye into the focus of the main character. For me, one thing that just was a needle in my side when they first said it was, why didn't he should have not taken the left turn at Albuquerque. In historical context, Bugs Bunny always misses the left turn at Albuquerque. One thing that stood out to me, especially in this short, was how much things were centered. So we'll just kind of put a center mark in here, and even within this first quarter, you can see that the character's very much in a T-pose on the top and bottom, and just off the main third. We look at the next frame. He's still very much centered, focused, and everything's dead center. Last and not leastly, he's still dead center, which is great, especially when you want your audience's focus to be on this character. Have him dead centered is a great way. And here, something which Warner Brothers did do a lot of is breaking the fourth wall and the character talking to the audience. Great classic Warner Brothers trait, but it definitely brings your audience in if he's talking straight into the camera. Beautiful. Loved it. Got excited. When I started breaking this down, I started looking at what were some of the traditional 2D techniques which they've brought forward into the new cartoons. And I was very excited to go through looking at this particular sequence. First thing, I've talked about backgrounds. Great. Backgrounds are there. There's people painted in the background. For me, I don't dig into these people being painted in the background, but it does add a slight difference into the traditional ones way back then to the modern ones which they've brought in. One thing I do want to point out is keep an eye on his hat. That dog hat, great. Obviously something they brought in, but Everything's centered, focused to start off with, but we're going to be going through a set of quick movements, and it's just really interesting to break down frame by frame as Bugs Bunny goes through these quick moves. So let's step through and talk through what we're looking at. So we've framed up the character, got rid of all his props, and he's ready for a really big move. I really like what they do with this. You ready for this? So first thing to note, he is dead center and he's got, equal parts to the top to the bottom of the frame. So he's inside, so he's got inside the frame, and he's also got a distance from the frame. Some of these things are breaking the bottom or just getting off the edge. That comes down to whether they're tweening, but they're really off the edge of frame. So it's nice to see he's in frame. But inside the frame now, what I really dig is he's doing fast moves. But take a look at what's happened to his face here. When we start looking at it, the bits where he's moved far away from, they have definitely been elongated and stretched out. His arms are nowhere near the size. His foot has now got an extra big fat foot. These bits have been accented because they're the bits that are moving the fastest. But not only have they scaled them in size, they've also done another tricky little technique, which is where they've put some motion blur on these parts as they're moving so quickly. They've actually painted in traditional motion blur. In 3D, computers can generate and work out the difference between the previous frame and the frame before and the frame after, and they can calculate the motion blur, but 2D never had that. You've always had to paint it in. So it's really nice to see that they've tried painting in this motion blur as well as doing the soft deformer or the elongated shapes which they're working with. So that's the start of a quick move. Let's look at the next bit. Comes into the settle pose, and as we can see with inside his settle pose now, all the shapes have caught back up to what they should be. So as we get into his next move, he's anticipating a big move again, so he's come back up to a move and he's in a hold pose until his next big move. And this time with the big move, we can see that they've changed up their formula a little bit, or they haven't used a formula to get motion happening in this next move which they've gone through. Instead of using the elongated shapes to lead your eye through the pose, they've just used the motion blur to go through this. So they're using different and very obvious techniques which are great to see in new forms of 2D. So now that he's quickly walking on the spot, we actually see that this part of his body doesn't move that much anymore. All the action was down in his legs going back and forward. And to help sell that his legs are moving really, really quickly, one of the things that traditionally they would have done back in the day would have been to give him multiple legs, like 3 or 4 legs actually all moving around. But here they've just used their motion blurs again, their painted motion blurs, to actually go, his feet are moving in a way that is really quick to give motion blur. I used to always love breaking him down and going, oh my God, there's multiple legs. I was hoping to find some, but I didn't find multiple legs in here. But one of the things I did find in here that got me really, really excited was to see how big they would draw appendages. From the little foot we had before to now having this huge foot on the leading third of the whole frame with, I don't think that would be his leg out there, but it's really, really nice to see that they're pushing scale. There is no way that in any world whatsoever he'd be able to get that foot that close to the camera on a passing frame, but 2D animation, there it is, it's drawn in there, and it's such a quick passing move that you can see there's a lot happening, and that foot is beautiful to see, such a big size foot within a frame on that leading third for the character to walk into. I loved it. Now Yosemite Sam for me has gone through a bit of a design change. Great. He should be the lead character, but he's interacting with other characters again, with kids and that. I'm like, that threw me off. He never used to be quite so interactive with so many other characters. If we remember what I was talking about before, here's I guess you'd say it's a cameo of the same prop that Bugs was wearing before. So it does appear again, and he gets mad at it. The other thing which really frustrated me when I watched this is we're lucky we get to see the cameo of this guy. I'm like, why are we seeing another face here? I've not known this character. I don't know what he's doing. Great, the roller coaster's going, but why do we need to see faces of people? Boom, know that I've mentioned him. So this is a list of things which were not to be taken on the roller coaster. This is a real traditional trick for long lists. I think about this one a lot because it's a real good trick, and I wanted to know what they put on the list. So I started going through it and I slowed down these frames to see what artists could put into a list that they would find funny. So I was really happy to kind of slop this down and go through frame by frame. Animals, food, drinks, liberals. They don't like liberals. No one likes chewing. Then there's no cats, no cell phones. So we don't want chewing on the coaster. We don't want cell phones on the roller coaster. We don't want bed bugs. No parking. Interesting. No tubers. No pizzas. No galoots. No hedgelands. No varmints. No yoga pants. No quacking. No unicycles. No loitering. No mermaids. No laughing. No cartoonists. No photography, and especially no rabbits. Now what you'll notice is as we've actually flicked through them, I've taken some grabs out of these, but some of them are blurry. Now what these blurry things mean is we're actually moving along when we see blurry things. We notice movement. We sit there and we notice movement because it's blurry, and if it's only flashing up for a frame, we think that we're still scrolling. What I loved about this list, and it's a really good trick to use when you're doing something as static as just going down a list. There's nothing in the background, there's nothing to give you any depth, but they run through this list 10 times to give you length. So they actually just scroll through the list 10 times going until you get to the bottom where it's nice and clear to go no rabbits. But all those bits in between, they just scroll past. Love it. Again, I was pretty happy to see that. So for this is a very good, this was a really cool bit which I loved actually pulling apart. It's a very traditional layout for bringing a character to travel distance and give you a bit of a shock. The first thing which I want to point out is the traditional thirds, which very classically, if you look at classic thirds on this, you got the line down the bottom, a line in the middle, which I've got the clouds on. This one's on 1/3, and the other third, which just happens to be where this spire is on this side, is empty, ready for the character to come through. So when we start off, we can just see this little speck back here. Beautiful little speck which we've got. The character we know has come from there. He's been booted out of there, so we've got that to start off with. When we look at the second frame, we can see that he's got bigger in frame now and he's going up. And look at that, he's still very close to this top third. As we continue through the sequence, we can see that he's actually getting a lot bigger. I love this. I love this shape that he's got. Leads him with a very straight line, and he's got his aeroplane wings out. I really dig that, they've really given him clear lines of action, which I thought is really, really cool. It's nice to see something so clean and clear with his silhouette. And finally, we end up down on the ground. Splat, splat, splat. And his fingers are actually all elongated here as well, a lot bigger than what he's used to. But his progression throughout the sequence, if we have a look at that, he's got a very nice clear arc, which is very important for arcs to go through, to read nice and clearly. But he's got a nice clear arc, and he ends up in the front third, right? So he's gone from small to large within the shot. The other interesting thing just to note within this, even though it's been a really quick sequence, quick shot, there's no blur. They haven't painted in any blur over top of this. He has got all very clear lines. Very different to where we started, where he was walking and he had lots of blur on him. I dug this one out really quickly as well, just because of the way that they led this in. Very, very classically, to think about what they've done, they've had a very centralized position here. Everything is centralized, like the main character, very happy, center. We even got the tracks which lead up directly through the center of the background. So, nice. Again, going back to the traditional way they do it, background, static, doesn't move. Foreground's the only thing that's moving, so they'd paint over top of the foreground, and you can see that in the way that even all your leading lines lead you back to a point which is dead center. And then out of dead center, we get our main protagonist running out from behind the main character. He appears very small, comes out to the left, which is really nice. He just appears, you don't know where he's come from. He's just appeared out from behind the main character. He's looking at it going, where did you come from? He can hear him. And he's still looking dead center as well. He's approaching, and that leads us into finally where he's come through and come across to actually push our main character off the center line out to the right, which I like. It's kind of gives us a cut point here off to the right, which is bottom right third of the shot. It's really nice that it exposes everything that's then behind our main character, because like I said, we had Bugs Bunny in the dead center before. He was hiding everything, but there's our dead center of shot right down here where the tracks were, and all our focus, or all our leading lines lead down here, but we've had Yosemite Sam come out from behind and lead us across to the right. And that leads us into, very excitedly, our next shot when we see it. Bugs Bunny's right here, exactly where Yosemite Sam was. And Yosemite Sam is back there on the center. So just through that sequence, you can see that they've been leading your audience's eye to where they want you to be looking between shots. Now, as a shot overall for this one, I really didn't dig this. I didn't think Yosemite Sam, I don't think Yosemite Sam would just be jumping and trying to grab. That's completely outside of what I think Yosemite Sam would do traditionally back in the day, but this is just modernizing it. Again, characters evolve, times change. It's a different look at it. I don't really like all this dead space back here. I mean, we've come from a shot where we've been going up and up and up and looking at the ground, and now we're just looking at the sky. It's very preemptive that everything is now down on this bottom third and lower. Fair enough. Even Bugs Bunny and Yosemite are jumping back and forwards in this lower third. So, from an artistic point of view, even especially since this particular sequence was so long in them jumping back and forwards between where they were doing, the gag for me didn't land, and the artistic use of space didn't work either. Small thing, but that's just my dig out of this one. To continue on my rant, I did not dig this gag. Mainly because, I go back to the traditional gags. I go back to an older style where things were more innocent. Having his skin rip off, and just being left with a skeleton there, and then having his skin fly away and land on a scarecrow in a field on an amusement park. That gag really didn't seem to fit with inside the Warner Brothers world, because I don't traditionally see that as a Warner Brothers gag. It's like a modern director gag, which might happen. It wouldn't fit within an amusement park. Even if we had the skin fly off, couldn't it go somewhere else within the amusement park to keep amusement park themed? So yeah, I mean, I don't mind the art and drawing it. For me, that gag didn't land. And this one got me annoyed as well. This dude, when you used to watch the old Warner Brothers cartoons, you didn't get cameo characters that appeared for 2 shots. I had to watch it a few times. I thought he was only ever in 1, but he does appear in the 2 shots. And he's led for a gag. I don't know where he comes from. And he's in for a toilet gag. Couldn't we have done the same gag without him? I think we could have, but, it's not my choice, that part. And just another little thing that really bugged me. Bugs Bunny's always been quite flamboyant and quite out there with his costumes. He's got no problem getting up in get-ups and changing his dress styles. But you always knew it was Bugs Bunny. The audience always knew when Bugs Bunny was dressed up. Now, in the start of the short, they do it really, really well. When Bugs Bunny is dressed up and walking to the roller coaster, you know it's him? That's fine. End of the short, they bring him in with a mask and you don't know it's him pushing for that last final gag. For me, that's not Bugs Bunny. He's always confident in his own right, but the audience is always in on that gag. So that last gag, as well as this gag, just didn't land for me. But still, that doesn't take anything away from the whole short itself. Well, there you have it. There's my breakdown of this short. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Are you going to watch more? Are you not going to watch more? Are you excited to look at it? I am. We're going to get 1,000 new minutes of Warner Brothers cartoons. We're going to have quite a lot to watch. So until the next time, bye-bye.